So you guys, as you all hop on today, Allie's going to be playing a song. Do you want to tell everyone what it is, or do you want me to like give a little?
Sure. I have actually two quick songs I'm going to play while people are still hopping on. Probably take like 5 minutes total. They're the two songs I used to play for myself when I was writing this book. They're by Ken Yates. The first one's called Best of the Broken Things, and the second one is called The Future is Dead. And I think this album on the whole was so influential to the book that I thought it might be interesting for you to hear the songs. And so I apologize if it's awkward because sometimes people have a hard time with people singing live, but um,
No, I love it. While you are playing, everyone, I'm going to open up the chat. So go ahead and while she is playing, tell us, who you are, where you're joining us from, so we can all get to know each other a little bit. And then I'm just going to give you a little brief overview of how this all works because we've got some new people joining us, which is awesome. But Missy and I start with some questions, and then at the end, we open it up for you to ask your questions. We unmute you one at a time so you don't talk over each other, and we hang out and have fun. So, so that's it. All right, Allie, take it away.
all right. So you're having trouble sleeping. All the things you tried to believe in, they all turned out to be deceiving. Broken words on broken strings, and your hands are feeling worn out and calloused. But your mind is the aurora borealis, in a world that's all anger and malice. You're the best of the broken things. California was a nice idea. Such a shame no one came out to see ya. Still, of all these lonely people, you're the best of the broken things. And I think you're being kinda dramatic when you say that love is anticlimactic. But like all the old stuff in your attic, it's the best of the broken things. Broken does as broken is. Some things that break don't need to be fixed. Sometimes you try, the pieces don't fit. And the worst pain comes with no bleeding, when you're stuck staring at the ceiling. But I think it's worth repeating, you're the best of the broken things. The best of the broken things. So that's the best of the broken things, which I always thought of as my jam song.
Aw.
And then this one is this one I want to talk about specifically, actually. It's called The Future is Dead. Tailspin, she's floating in the wind, trying to throw her weight around. What's more, she's swimming for the shore and the city's already drowned. All of the ghosts in this cul-de-sac are roaming the hallways, anxious and sad. She said the future is dead and there's no looking back. Oh no, this thing is gonna blow, get some cover while you can. So, Mr. Status Quo, get your news fade. They're high in the thread count but never get made. She said the future is dead and there's no way to escape. It's 4 p.m. It's already dark again. Who are they saving the daylight for? Staring at the sky, shaking her fist. Honest to God, don't bring faith into this. She said the future is dead and there's no way to resist. She said it's all in your head and time you don't ever miss. Thank you. Okay, now I got original sound off, and I'm gonna move my guitar out of the way and be right back.
Okay, while she's being right back, we will just give a formal introduction. So thank you all for joining us. We are joined today by Allie Larkin, who is best-selling author. We had her on for The People We Keep a few years ago, so it's fun to have her back. She's also the founder of the True Hearts Collective, which sounds totally dope, and I want to talk about because it's basically this safe space for creatives that she has created to share their goals and dreams, and she gives advice and has special speakers come on. And so today she's joining us from San Francisco, where she lives, and we are going to talk about Home of the American Circus. So have your books handy, have your questions handy, and we'll dive in. So Allie, that was the coolest way to start.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I don't normally play live. Like when you see me post a video, it's something where like if I mess up, so to get through a whole song live is like a challenge for me.
I
Um,
love it.
but I thought that you might see the influence of those songs in the book, so I thought it might be interesting. And I wanted to talk about some of the influence in the song because um,
Yeah.
The Future is Dead specifically is such a suburban song, and it kind of brought me back to my childhood growing up in Somers very specifically. And there's one scene, and I can't remember now if the song triggered it or the song just like fit into the book so perfectly. I can't remember which came first, my awareness of this song or the scene that I was writing. But where I grew up, all the reservoirs feed into New York City water. And so, like, when he's talking about the city's already drowned, it makes me think so specifically of the reservoir that they flooded a town next to where I grew up to make the reservoir. And so you'd walk along the coast, like the shore of the reservoir, and find like broken bits of bottles and things. And I wrote about that in the book. And I can't remember if that memory was triggered by
By the song.
song or if I heard the song and thought, oh my gosh, I think he's writing about me, like, you have
Right.
the feeling sometimes where you're like, this song is everything in my head. And then just the idea of like the cul-de-sacs and the high thread count on the sheets that's like so Stina and Charlie and
Mm,
like just that feeling of like something's gonna burst here in the suburbs.
yeah.
Um, and I think sometimes that I have a hard time taking myself out of my life to center myself. And so both of those songs were really helpful for that. And I think that like if there were ever a theme song for Jam, it would be The Best of the Broken Things. Like,
How perfect was that?
yeah, yeah.
As you were
It's
singing, I was like, that is Jam's song.
Jam song. It is Jam song. And anytime I wrote a scene with Jam, I would be like, okay, I gotta like because you can get really frustrated with Jam, but the
Mm,
point of him, the tragedy of him is the love that you have for somebody who's not all together, who
right.
can't not fall apart in front of you.
And how hard that is.
It's so hard. It's
Yeah.
heartbreaking.
Yeah. So let's start in the beginning
Yeah.
because you wrote a book that takes place in your home, which is ballsy.
Yes. I tricked myself into that.
So, where did this novel come from? Like what came first? The idea of incorporating Bet into the story or the story of Freya or was it Jam? Like where did it all start?
It was Freya and Jam. I was on a retreat in Ithaca with a bunch of other writers, and I think it was the year after we moved here. I think it was like 2013, 2015, something around then. And I had been hitting myself up, my head up against the wall with the people we keep so much. Like I just could not sell the people we keep for anything. And which was partly because one of my agents had sent it out as a young adult book, and then I couldn't get another agent to represent me because that book had been to every imprint, but as a young adult book. And so um, I ended up saying, okay, I got to start something new. And I liked the idea of writing like a hometown story, but I wasn't thinking about my hometown. Like that was not on the radar.
Anyone
But I
else
was,
but mine.
yeah, but I was thinking about like how you can rekindle old friendships
Hmm.
when you go back to your hometown um and how like you have friendships from different phases of your life and they mean so much to you and then you kind of move on from them and it's not like you outgrow people, but we don't necessarily get to outgrow people anymore because we see them on Facebook every day. And so there's always like these awkward transitions and stuff. And so I was just thinking about that a lot. And I was thinking about wanting to write like a hometown story because I'd seen a whole bunch of movies about hometown stories for men. And I was like, I want like a woman's hometown story. And I don't want her to be like, cute. Like, I want someone who's messy. I want someone who's really living kind of a rough life. And so the book started as Freya and Jam. And actually, B was dead. B was in it, but she was dead.
Oh.
So it was a story about them kind of coming back together when their friend had died in high school in a really traumatic way. And then I sat on that for a million years and was like, I don't really want to write that story. That's depressing. And then it just kind of kept coming back to me though, like Freya and Jam over and over and over again. And then um, I started thinking about Freya inheriting a house, and I started thinking about giving her. When I was younger, I wanted to move to Maine and buy a house and bartend and play guitar. Like that's what I wanted to do with my life. Before I knew I wanted to write, I had dropped out of school and I was a bartender. And I was a bartender at a place that was a lot like the restaurant where Freya works before it turned fancy. And um and then I worked at a biker bar in Connecticut. And my big goal at that time was to save money to buy like a crappy little house in Maine and finish it up. So if you twist all of that into my head, this is a little bit like what if I had tried to do that and failed, even though Freya and I are in, like, that was me kind of saying like, well, that's what that life looks like, which is kind of with April, it was like at one point I had thought about wanting to be a folk singer. And so it was like, what does that life look like? Um, so eventually I started to realize that I wanted to set it in my hometown because I wanted to capture what it feels like to be a sensitive person in an insensitive world. And I feel like for me, the best example of that was growing up in Somers and hearing the stories about old Bet and understanding that a captive elephant is such a tragic thing. Meanwhile, we had like Somers Tuskers, and there's a clogging team called the Tusker Trumpers, and we had the art circus was our art fair in town and everything. And I just was always so heartbroken by it when we learned about Bet, and it made me feel so far apart from people. And it wasn't something I could necessarily even find words for to explain to my friends. So it was like this like shameful little secret that I was holding that kept me separate from everybody else. Um, and so I wanted to play with that. So I started thinking like, okay, maybe I'll set it in Somers and just have this idea of this very sensitive person, and this is a good way to illustrate it. And then as I went to write it, I was like, well, I just have to check some facts about old Bet because I thought I knew everything. And I started realizing I didn't know everything.
Mm.
And I started realizing that the facts out there aren't real facts. Like there are so many conflicting things. And then I started to think about how like that's the way we tell stories about other people too. That our truth and somebody else's truth aren't the same thing, and who gets to hold the truth in a situation. And it's Charlie, and it's Hackalaya Bailey, and it's not Freya, and it's not Bet, and it's not
Right.
And so I wanted to kind of play with that parallel.
Mm.
Um, and the fact that, what we think of as fact, like Freya even says it in the book, you know, something like Paul Revere's ride or like a bigger event, it's already been distilled down to the consensus. But in the events that aren't as like nationally newsworthy, it's not. And
Mm.
so the truth is really fuzzy and it turns into lore in very local places, but it's not the true story.
Mhm.
And that also ties into there's a point where Freya says towards the beginning that like the ultimate unfairness of small towns is that you become like a collection of everybody else's idea of you. And
Right.
that's the lore of Bet too, is Hakaleo Bailey got to be the hero, Charlie gets to be the hero.
Mm. So powerful. We can all relate to all of that,
I think
right?
it's really funny because I think it's a very female story. I think this is like the most feminist book I've written, even though I wrote a book about 70-year-old mermaid performers, you know. Um, I think that this is I really tried to kind of lean into the female gaze on this. Like I
Mm.
really wanted to do that. And I had a male writer read it early on who kind of just wanted me to make it stop. Like the feedback that I got from him was very much like,
Really?
just like wanted Charlie to be a bigger part of the story than it was, and like did not understand the female experience. I also want to say, to Matthew Norman's credit, because I love Matthew Norman so much, he read this book and said it is so feminist and I love it. Like he saw it and he was like, and I love it. Like so, and it rocks.
Mm.
So but I think I stopped caring about trying to make anybody uncomfortable with this book because I really wanted to tell this story
Yeah.
a very feminine way, but like a true feminine way, not a performative feminine way.
So, in your acknowledgments, you have a quote in there. It says, "This is the story of a world I knew to make that world in its time seem real again. I have described actual places. I have not described any people I have ever known. If the reader thinks he recognizes in these pages any living people, he is using his memory, not mine. I
Mm.
have told a story that might have happened, not one that did happen." So, you say that you found that in when you were antiquing in a journal. So did that just feel like kismet and that you had the freedom to write this story in your hometown and it just was like, this is going to work?
Yeah, I mean, it sounds fake, but it's not fake. And actually, I have the book. I'll
Oh,
make a mess if
cool.
I try to get the book for you, but I'll post a picture of the book like in the next couple of days. I used to have when I was a kid, because like when we went on road trips up to New England, we'd stop at all these antique stores and I would buy all these books.
Mm.
And so I used to have this huge collection of like really weird, obscure books, and I don't have them anymore. And so I started thinking like I just wanted to kind of remember what they feel like and see what you can get. And you can buy, I think like designers buy them. You can buy like odd lots of old books on Etsy. So I bought some. I got some that were like so horrible, like just terrible. Like I got one of like dirty limericks. I was like, what?
Oh my gosh.
But the first one I picked up was by Ellen Berlin, who was married to Irving Berlin. Um,
Oh, wow.
and which I thought was interesting too in terms of who gets remembered. Um,
Right.
and I was already at that point of the like, who gets remembered, and I was like starting to feel like, oh, maybe I shouldn't write this book about my hometown, but now I'm like so far in and it's good and it's all making sense, but like, do I try to make Somers a different, like, do I call it something else? Like, do I name the elephant something else? Like,
Mm.
what am I going to do here? I can't do that. And then I ordered this box, and the first book I picked up was that book, and I opened it and saw that, and I was like, what is
Meant to
happening here?
be. Mm.
Yeah. So And to be completely honest with you, I haven't read the rest of the book. Like, I've read little parts of it, but that was what I needed from it. And it's like very old and fragile. And it just feels like if I try to like sit down and read it, it's gonna fall apart and I'm gonna be so sad. Like, I'm gonna have to read it with like white gloves on, you know?
Mm.
Um, but yeah, that made me realize that, like, firstly, that people are gonna think whatever people are gonna think. And
Right.
I shouldn't limit my art because of that. And secondly, that I don't have to tell Somers exactly the way that it was, and things that I changed. Like when I left Somers in 2002, and I have not been back. Or I left Somers in 2000, but I have not been back since 2002. Um, and and my time in Somers was fragmented. Like I was constantly leaving and coming back from like 95 to 2000. Um, but I looked up like when certain things existed in Somers. Like I remember Gristedes. It was our grocery store. It was this tiny little grocery store. I still remember what it smelled like. Like I, remember the layout of it perfectly, and I wanted to write Gristedes. And when I looked it up, it was a CVS during the time of the book. And I was like,
Uh,
I don't care. It's okay.
That's not gonna work for me.
Yeah, I don't care. So,
Mhm. Hmm.
um, I'm seeing some questions, but
Oh, we'll have the questions at the
okay.
end. It's all right. We'll go
So,
through and then ask
okay.
them.
So, yeah, so I started like giving myself little liberties. Also, like Ellsworth, Maine, I kind of condensed some spaces so that they're closer, like technically. And I don't think there's really a motel like the one that
Hmm.
Freya was living in, but I wanted that story there. And so, like, I just gave myself freedom to tell the story I wanted to tell with the elements that I wanted. But a lot of it's pretty accurate. And, a lot of
But by
it's,
doing that, I feel like you gave yourself permission to, really sink into the feeling of the story more and not
yes,
get stuck on details that might not sink in history or whatever. And you're so sensitive and you're so caring, and that comes through in the novel. So, how do you, as you're writing, take care of you and kind of protect your heart? Because I mean, I'm reading this and it's like crushing my soul. And I can't imagine living with these characters every day for 2 years while you're writing it. So,
yeah. Well, and I was living with them on and off for, 8 years or something like that,
wow.
and then it was like 2 years of like, s- stuck in it, like really in it and not really doing much else. I'm not super healthy about it, to be completely honest. Like it puts me through the ringer. It's not, like my husband has joked, like he'll come home and I'll be crying and he'll be like, is this real person crying or is this book crying?
Is Jam making you cry again?
Exactly. And, I think that in some ways it's not healthy in that it's very hard to churn up all those feelings and go about your life in like a very typical way.
Mm.
On the other side of it, when I finished the first draft of The People We Keep, I had less anxiety. I had less shame about myself. I just felt like something wasn't on my shoulders anymore that had been on my shoulders for a very long time. And this book was like another level of that. Um, so I'm not sorry. I don't know how else I would live my life,
I
but
know, but by doing that, I feel like it helps a lot of other people heal too, as well. I mean, I know like for me, I read your books and I feel so seen, and I feel less broken. Like when you find your people that like help put your pieces together, then you're like, okay, like I'm not the only person that has had a hot mess life. You know?
yeah,
So,
that's the thing. Like, one of the things that in being friends with people I grew up with, where we just weren't talking about mental health, where we were just trying so hard to look like we were holding it together, like you talk to people later and you're like, oh, wasn't great for you at home either, like I thought your family was perfect. Like,
right.
it's just, I think that that's why it's so important to talk about these things. I
Mhm.
also think that, I read something once years ago that like all of your ghosts, like all the demons that like when you have a quiet moment and your head starts being mean to you, all of that is stuff you survived.
Mm.
And so I feel like there is power in looking directly at those feelings, even if you're not dealing in the truth, to say, like, okay, I survived that. I had a therapist years ago who would say to me, okay, what age are those feelings? Like, you're having these feelings. What age
Oh,
are those
wow.
feelings? And I'd
Mm,
be like, oh man, that's like fourth grade, didn't
mm.
get invited to the birthday party feelings. And she'd be like,
Wow.
okay, so you talk to your little kid self and you say, that's okay, you're gonna have great friends, like that's okay, you're gonna have a great day without them, and you're gonna have people who really understand you someday. And I have like a picture of myself when I was a kid over on my bulletin board, and I think probably 12, like 13, something like that. I just always look at her and I'm like, okay, kiddo, it's all right. Like,
You got this. You're going to
yeah,
be a big girl with big
yeah,
pants.
yeah.
And
You're
you're going
now
to
you're
help
an
some other
adult with a
girls.
credit card, and like you can get out of situations and it's
Mhm.
okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
So, what was your biggest goal for the book? What would you want readers to take away? You have Freya coming home to heal. You've got some intergenerational trauma. You have, the difficulty of just like breaking cycles, and you have found family. There's like a little bit of a subplot romance, like, which I loved everything. But what was your big goal?
I mean, I think that all my books are really like found family stories at the core, and the concept of being lovable even if the people that were supposed to love you couldn't.
Mm.
Um,
Love
I
that.
think that like with Freya and Aubrey and the ending, it's like with this story specifically, and with like Freya cutting the deer fence and all of that, it's like that whole concept of hiking your own hike, um, of like finding freedom for yourself. I think that really was important to me to write about. Because there are levels of coming from a place that wasn't good where you escape and don't allow yourself freedom yet. Like there's levels of like, I'm gonna have boundaries, or I'm not gonna be a part of that anymore, or whatever. And then you're still kind of living your life as if those issues are in your daily life, like you're still walking around with what haunts you. And so the idea of like, cutting the deer fence and walking out into the woods, like, I think that's kind of an important thing to think about. Like,
Hmm.
we can get out of the trap and still stay trapped.
Right. So is that what inspired the fire?
Yeah, for some reason, I just always knew that that was gonna
You burn it
happen.
all down.
Yeah. It- and it's
Very
so funny
symbolic.
because the Spotify playlist, like at first, I couldn't transfer my Apple iTunes playlist for this book over directly because Burning Down the House was like one of the last songs on my playlist. And I was like, well, that's a spoiler right
You're like,
there.
I
So,
can't really have people listen to that until they read the book.
exactly. So, but yeah, it was definitely like this act of freedom. I knew at some point that line of like, in however many days we're gonna climb Mount Katahdin, and after that we can go anywhere. Like
Mm.
that idea of like after that we can go anywhere, like hit me, and I was like, that is absolutely the last line of the book. What's the rest of the story? Like that's the freedom that I want her to have at the end, and how are we going to get there? And then, the fire came pretty easily, and then trying to figure out how that was going to work, it was like reverse engineering for a while.
Right? Because you're not a linear writer. Like you don't sit down and go, okay, here's my like plot line. You're like, what am I
Yeah,
feeling today?
yeah, yeah. I don't even know, like, I'm trying to think of like the first thing that I wrote. Oh, you know what it was? The first thing that I wrote directly that ended up in the book was Freya sitting on the step when Aubrey comes home and her guts are bleeding.
Hmm.
That was
Mm.
the first like specific thing I wrote about the book, was like that with the bird heads and everything.
That just come to you like you're laying in bed and you're like, this is the scene in my head.
Yeah, which is kind of a weird thing to admit. But I
Wow.
also don't have an appendix. So, like, that's a part of, I had an appendectomy when I was a bartender. So, like, it's so funny. I saw somebody had complained that the appendix was like too dramatic, and she was a nurse, and so she knew it was too dramatic. And I was like, but you're a nurse, so you're treating someone, and then they go home and
Right.
deal with all the stuff that I
Hmm.
dealt with, and it was painful. And I was actually worried when I was writing the book that like it was really hard for me to go back to standing on my feet full time. I was like, I kind of feel like Freya's doing too much too soon, but I have to condense it for the purpose of the book. So.
Oh,
um,
so great though. I mean, it makes it so powerful because you just feel her stress and the pressure points on her physically, mentally, all of that. So you feel the weight of all that she is bearing. So,
Yeah, and it's also for her. I mean, when I was a bartender, it's like, I mean, I would work like 14-hour days. Like, I'd work lunch and dinner shifts all the way through until closing. And like, you stop feeling your body,
mm,
like you're on your feet, you're at the beck and call of everybody who's around you, and you stop feeling your body. And so, like,
yeah.
when my appendix hit, like, that was actually the moment of wake up for me in my life. Like, that's when got to the point of like, a couple months later, I had quit my job and gone back to college, like, was applying to college because I was like, oh, wait, I got to listen to what's happening here.
Mm.
So, yeah.
So you just played a song for us, which was amazing. Music was a part of the last book, and I feel like music, you said to me earlier, like, well, I know the music wasn't really in this book. I'm like, music was totally in this book. I still felt like jam, I just have this image seared in my brain of him like sitting in this water in this basement playing. It's like he's haunted by the music. So let's just talk about music because I feel like it is so integral to like your personality and like your personal healing and journey. And it really comes across on the page so well. So let's talk about music.
Yeah, I studied classical voice for like a decade when I was younger. I was in chamber choir. I did play guitar eventually, and I'm not like, I just kind of mess around on guitar so I can sing a little bit. But I especially when I was in Somers, and I think that's kind of what got me back to thinking about music and making Jam a musician. Because for a while, like, he was just a guy, like he wasn't a piano player. Um, we had this absolutely amazing music teacher in high school named Mr. Cook, who is just an incredible human being, and taught us the Fauré Requiem and took us to London to sing in cathedrals. And like,
Wow.
everything that was good in my life when I was younger was around the arts, like the good things I had in my life. I took after school pottery classes, I took music classes, I took drawing, I went to art camp. Um, and so I think that for me, like, art is always the healing thing. Um, and then I liked the idea of the healing thing not being intrinsic to Jam, that like he had this thing that he loved, and I guess maybe it was intrinsic, but he had this thing that he loved that got blown out of proportion into something else, like that
It
took his
stopped helping.
agency.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he didn't get to practice it as an art. He practiced it as a prodigy, and that's a different thing. And so I really liked being able to explore that. I thought it was important. Um, but yeah, like, music is, I kind of look to music for a lot of inspiration for things. I um, like to have soundtracks in my head for different scenes. Like, that helps me because I kind of picture everything like a movie. So if I have a song and I need to get back into the scene and there's a song for it, that gets me there. It's like, okay, I can see it all. It makes it really hard to listen to songs that I love after I'm done working on the book because they're still so tied to the movie in my head, and it's like a weird
Mhm.
situation. Sometimes I can swap a song over, like if it means something different to a different character or something. Sometimes there's songs that like can cross paths, but it's not a given.
Um, So this is probably a question where it's more like you're comparing apples to oranges. Did you have a favorite character to write? Like all of your characters, they're fully fleshed out, well developed. They feel like a character study almost. So was one easier to write, harder to write? Did you have a favorite?
I loved writing Gus and Shorty so much, like both of them, because they took like
Okay.
absolutely no work. Like I did work in a place like that. They're not specific to like one person or another who is like that. They're kind of like other characters who could have existed in that world very easily. And so like they just kind of showed up by themselves and they talked to me, like they said what they needed to say. And like I like especially Shorty, like I could hear him in my head, like this like soft little voice and like, yeah, Freya, yeah, like and it was so fun to write him and like his true heart, it was like he really would go take his truck and try to find her in the woods if, just because
Mhm.
she, you know, she was good too. Like you could see that she was a good person too, that like she remembered how he liked his fries after all those years and it meant like so much to him because he doesn't feel seen. And I don't know, I just loved writing them so much. Like it was always fun and like Gus understanding that Freya kind of needed somebody to be proud of her and so he was. I felt like that was so beautiful. And I know I'm kind of talking about them like I didn't write them, but that's kind of how it felt. It was like they just kind of showed up when I needed them and did what they needed to do and it just didn't really take much consideration and
Well,
but I feel like we're really cool.
it comes across really well because the found family with those characters was one of my favorite parts of the story. I just thought it was really special relationships that they had.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Well, and it helps us to navigate the trauma so well because at the core you have these very heavy themes, right?
Mhm.
You have generational sexual trauma against these women that could make the book just completely heartbreaking. But you
Yes.
balance it by showing us that, like, yes, there's some crappy people in this world, and yes, crappy stuff happens. But there's also people, if you let them in, who will fight for you and who will stand up for you. And, people show up and, it's okay to let your guard down and let people love you a little. And I think those are all
Mhm.
lessons that we, especially as women, need to hear because it is easy, I think, to want to put up the walls and be like, I just don't trust anybody. I don't want, I can do things on my own. I'm this independent woman. But we still, even independent women need people.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that I think that because I have been estranged from my relatives for like 20 years and that was excruciating. I wouldn't wish it on anybody, but I've had room to have these beautiful relationships in my life that I wouldn't have been able to have when I was in such a dysfunctional situation that I was like breaking, and at the point where I was able to heal myself, I was able to start to see the goodness in other people. And, and some of that came before I left. Like some of that came from when I was working at that restaurant and, the guys that I worked with, it was like this weird thing, it was this 21-year-old woman like have like spending my afternoons with these regulars who would come in every single day, but they cared about me.
Yeah.
Like my boss would walk by and like hit someone upside the head because he didn't like how they were looking at me,
Mm.
and they knew a lot about me and they would help me if my car wasn't working. And, like it was just kind of care and concern with no ulterior motive.
Mhm.
Um, and and really no ulterior motive. I was like their grandkid, like I was like it wasn't like anyone, like if a younger guy came in, that was a problem, but it was like these old dudes sitting around talking, they just wanted someone to hear their stories it and they cared about me and I felt
Yeah.
that and it felt different from the way that I was told people cared about me.
Mm.
And that kind of changed my life, which is a weird thing to say about a bartending job, It's a very weird thing to say.
Mhm.
But I think that um, it was a special place, and I also just think that there's a lot of decent people in the world.
Yeah. Let's talk. Aubrey.
Yeah.
Um, I love that she becomes this, driving force for Freya, but she also really stands on her own as a really strong character. So, where did she come from in your head?
Yeah, I think I've talked about this before, but like I was driving by Kmart when it still existed here,
Yeah.
and there was a girl sitting on a bunch of grocery carts pushed together, sitting cross-legged, sucking on a lollipop with big hoodie on, and I was like, it's just gotta hurt. And she's like acting like it doesn't because she knows it looks cool, and I just was so fascinated with that. And so and like this, I think I'd already been writing Aubrey maybe, but it was like immediately in my head that became Aubrey,
Mm.
like immediately. Um, and then I've just noticed that like, I'm Gen X and I've noticed that younger people have a greater sense of autonomy than I did growing up. They have like a greater sense of self than I did, even while they're still teenagers and yourself is still fragile and
Yeah.
um, you're still gonna, it's not like family dynamics changed so much that kids today don't suffer abuse at home, but they have better language. Like I at one point where Jam says something about Aubrey's pants and she's like, "You're not,"
That's
you
right.
know, well,
That scene was
because
great.
whether or not her mother was going to teach her things. She was going to learn that from a friend whose mother taught her those things, or from a friend, or from social media, or from something else she'd seen. Like she had a slightly stronger sense of self
Mm.
or actually a much stronger sense of self than Freya did at that age. And even as Freya's like trying to figure out where her strengths are now. But Aubrey doesn't have control of her life,
Right.
even while she has that sense of self. And that's something that I think is kind of the cruelty of being a smart, fairly well actualized child in a situation you can't get out of,
Right. You're
um,
still stuck.
you're still stuck.
I really thought it was just their dynamic was really incredible because it was almost like a sisterly bond, but um they both
Mhm.
needed each other and they both had wisdom for each other while still being in the middle of the messy. And I even that, like, I just love that wisdom there that you don't have to wait for everything to be perfect. Like you can be wise in the messy and you can care in the messy. Like,
Yeah. I have with my friend Alice Carboni Tench, and we had Nikki DeLoach on, who's an actress. She's in a ton of Hallmark movies. She was one of the Mouseketeers in the Mickey Mouse Club when she was younger. She's just one of the most wise people, and she was talking about how like you can't wait for your life to when we had her on the podcast the other day, like she was talking about how like life is hard and you can't wait for the hard to stop to like enjoy your life. You have to try
right.
to figure out how to enjoy it in the middle of
Mhm.
things,
And it can
which was such an
coexist. Like that's what I
yeah.
love about this novel is it's not like you're belittling these horrible, tragic events that happened to both of these women, but you're showing how you can still find beauty in the everyday, find beauty in friendships, find beauty in relationships, find healing like as you go. And it can be tiny. It doesn't have to be gigantic.
Yes, yes, very much so. And that was one of the things. I feel like if he ever watches this, he's gonna think I'm talking trash about him, but I'm not. That advice, that feedback that I got from that male writer,
Mm,
um, he's pointing out things. I'm a pervert at one point, and he's like, "But she was sexually assaulted. She would never do that." And
mm,
like, I think he just wanted Freya to be completely ruined by what happened to her.
mm.
And that's not how we work. Like, what is it? Like 1 in 4 women did. It's not, and it's probably more than that. And we still go on with our lives. And it's not that it doesn't hurt us, and it's not that it's not traumatic, and it's not that it's not a horrible thing. And it can break you, and there's no shame in that either. Of us are the walking wounded, and we still find joy in our lives, and we still find humor in calling our friend a pervert when he's being a pervert, or, it's not, it's
The
not,
two truths
it
can exist
doesn't,
at the same time.
yes,
Mhm.
and it's not the defining moment in our lives.
Right.
Like, or at least we don't want it to be. So we're gonna fight like hell to make sure that it's not, you
Right.
know? If we have the resources, if we have the strength, if we have the support, if we have the family that we need,
Mm.
however it's, happens, we're not going to let that be the defining moment in our lives. And I feel like there is the female gaze in that, like what a man does in our life is not the definition of us,
Right.
you know?
Mhm.
I don't think that you can get there from the male gaze
Mm-mm.
naturally if you're not like, really working hard on your feminism as a man.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. So, Ellie, are you a foodie? All of the food from the fancy, when it becomes a fancy restaurant, like do all these menus, all this food, like how,
So I have something asked which means I like 20 foods. Like I have a thing where my bowels will build up and I'll start having anaphylactic shock to a food that didn't bother me yesterday.
Oh.
It's been my whole life. It's gotten progressively worse as I've gotten older, and I understand the rules of it now. Like when I was in college, one time I ate like way too much pineapple. My friend and I just like bought a pineapple and
And
were
ate the whole
eating.
thing, of course.
Yeah, the two of us ate an entire pineapple together, and my face got hot and my tongue swelled up, and like, you know, um, and thank goodness it didn't get worse than that. But so I've had those kinds of reactions to things that felt like a wild card until a couple of years ago when I was diagnosed, and I was like, okay, now I know the rules of myself. So when I could eat things, I also just learned at like 45 years old that not everybody's stomach hurts after they eat, which is like I got medicine that made that stop. And so I was like, wait a minute, people actually enjoy eating? Like I kind of thought that like I didn't really get foodies because food
Not
was a
fun.
battle for me.
Right.
Like and so I had fun writing this because I'm not a foodie. I don't understand food. I wasn't a picky eater as a kid. I liked trying new things, and then it just got not pleasant. But so I had a really fun time researching recipes and ingredients and finding the extra words to make everything a little bit more fancy than it needed to be because it seems bizarre to me that anybody wants to put that much time into food, except I know that that's true. Like, I have friends who write cookbooks, I have friends who are incredible chefs, and you know, um, see that as an art form, but it's an art form I don't understand necessarily. So I had fun with that because I've always thought it was a little bit funny.
Oh
Like,
my gosh, it just cracked me up just because, I have three sons and like you will go out and I will always want the, sushi bowl or like give me like the lovely and they're like, why does this place have like this place should just have burgers and like hot dogs and like chicken fingers.
yeah.
I love that you have this bar and everybody's like, I just want like normal food. Why are you giving me all this fancy crap? And she's like sneaking them what they want. Which
Yeah.
yeah.
again, like food is a love language for a lot of people. So like I also felt like that was such a way that she was like showing them that she saw them and loved them, like by feeding them what they
Yes.
wanted.
And also like trying to save the restaurant too, because she's like
Mhm.
still charging for them for that food. It was kind of like there's like this gap between the customers and place. And yeah, and that was like the place where I worked was this little Italian restaurant. It was like hearty Italian food. And then it's a different place now. It's not the same place. And I don't think it's like that. I haven't looked into it enough, but it was just the idea of like, well, what else would it become? And the place where Gristedes was like is now a very fancy grocery store.
Mhm.
And so I thought like, well, that's just kind of like the way that time passed. Even when I was bartending, drinks were very like the straightforward old-fashioned drinks. I went to bartending school. Like you learn how to make an old fashioned, you learn how to make a Long Island iced tea and
Right.
like a rusty nail and those kinds of things. And then all of a sudden, like especially, and I think it was around 2007, everything started to get super fancy. So you could charge like $15 for a drink, but it was like some special bespoke
Now it has
thing.
egg white on top.
Exactly. Or like they were putting a smoke, and it's like, does that, okay? But
Okay.
I thought about like, well, when I was a bartender, if I had been like, hold on, I'm gonna burn the orange rind for you, like I could have been like, get out of here. What's wrong with you? Like,
Go
just
get me my Pabst Blue Ribbon.
exactly. Like,
Okay, well, we obviously have to talk about Jam
yeah,
because everyone loves him,
yeah.
but is also like hurt by him and is also worried about him.
Yeah.
So, so what's going on with Jam?
Jim is, he was a prodigy. I did a lot of research on prodigies and learned that a lot of times they don't go on to continue. They're very good mimics. A lot of times they're not necessarily, nobody's teaching them how to be an artist. They're teaching them how to perform like an adult as a child. And then as an adult, they're not special anymore because everybody has basic proficiency as, playing Bach when you went to school to play piano, and he doesn't necessarily he doesn't know how to put the soul into the music at a certain point.
Mm.
Um, and I think that like where his breaking point was he was starting to see musicians with soul and realizing he was a mimic. And he has that soul in there, but he didn't trust it, because everything he's ever been praised for has been like being this very perfect little boy who's playing on the piano and getting everything perfect and looking like an adult as a kid. And,
Mm.
and then he's realizing that that's only going to get him so far. And so he has to tap into his soul, but his soul is the soul of a kid whose mom killed himself, and he doesn't want to admit that to himself. And so, like, for Jam, those quiet moments are torturous, because he doesn't realize that he's survived what's chasing him. And I
Right.
don't think you want to survive something like you don't want to get past something like that. I don't know how you would.
Mm.
So, um, and his dad's a therapist that has no way of like is also oblivious to so many things and
Mm.
including his son's mental health. And so he's just I think drugs have helped him in getting through his day to day, but that's the
Getting by.
bandage. Yeah, that's the bandage, and he knows it's going to get worse. And he's smart enough to know this isn't going to go well for him if he keeps doing it. But what else does he have in his life? And um,
Mm.
and he keeps trying to figure out the puzzle of music, but it's so tied to the loss of his mother that it's like taken away from him in some ways. Like it's painful
Right.
until he
Doesn't seem to bring
gets,
him joy.
yeah, yeah. So he's kind of a tortured artist, basically.
Mm.
Um,
So everyone wants to know, are we supposed to think he started the fire?
yeah.
I mean, that's what we got. We're like, she doesn't say it, but I kind of feel like
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the whole Arduino thing at the beginning of the book where he's talking about how electricity makes sense to him and
Yeah.
um, just that he has the skills to figure something like that out.
And he
And
tried to release Bet also, which I loved.
yes,
By the way, I burnt down your house and I tried to free Bet.
but
I
he
couldn't.
did save the cat,
Oh,
which
that's
is
right.
the
Yeah.
cat is kind of the nod towards like, yes, this was planned. Like he went and got the
Yeah.
cat, like
Yeah.
so
Mm.
Easter egg, if you want it, about Jam is that he went to Dr. Singh to get allergy medicine,
Mm.
which means he went back to Dr. Singh,
Oh,
which is hope. That's
that is
hope.
hope.
Yeah.
I don't think connected that dot.
Yeah.
Hmm.
See, that's what I liked about the whole ending you did. It felt like sort of like things were wrapped up in a bow, but not really. You also had the interpretation as the reader, like, okay, what's going to happen next? What happened? So I thought it was really well done.
Hmm.
Thank you. I really appreciate that.
Um, Tell me about your artwork because your covers are amazing.
Thank you. I had nothing to do with them other than choosing them.
Oh,
Um,
It's so cool though. I feel like it's your colors too.
Yeah. I
It's
like
so,
the way it feels matted, like it has a texture to it.
yeah, they did an excellent, excellent job with it. And
It
yeah,
looks
it
so pretty
was,
together.
yeah, it was, I think there were like maybe, I mean, there were a couple to choose from. Some were like totally different from the people we keep, but I really just immediately loved that one. I think there was another one with maybe different house colors and a different font, but that one was the one where like it took 2 seconds to choose it. They showed me a couple covers and I was like, oh, it's that one.
That one.
There we
That's
go.
so fun. I love it. Well, I want to make sure that I leave time for our friends to ask questions. So some of them have submitted questions ahead of time. Some of them will pop in and note over here in the comments that they have a question. So I'm going to start calling on the people that let me know ahead of time. So that would be Mary Ellen. Mary Ellen, do you want to go first? Just go unmute you. There you go. Welcome, friend.
Thank you. Allison, thank you so much for writing this book. I look at all these flags. Can you see them?
Oh,
I This meant so much to me. And I'm gonna start crying
oh, you're gonna
because
make me
I
cry.
just say it meant so much to me. I really connected with it. So I had a question about the fire too, and I thought Jan probably started it, and this is probably silly, but I wanted to know besides the cat, do you think he got the piano out of there?
No, I think he wanted to burn the piano specifically.
Well, I thought about that, and I thought, if he needed a piano later in life, it would be better to have a brand new one with no memories and no attachment. But, I wondered what you thought.
I think
But
for Jam, that was his, that was his cutting the deer fence
The burden.
yeah,
situation. Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah, that makes sense. It really does. What surprised you the most in writing this story?
Definitely the bet research. Like that was really, I mean, because I grew up with that lore and believing the story the way that it was and thinking that facts were facts like that. So definitely that. I really, what really surprised me the most about this book is that when I finished writing The People We Keep and I had all these ideas for this book that had been going on forever, I thought, okay, fine, but there's no way I'm going to love these characters as much as I love those characters because of all the books I've written before that, as much as I loved them, I didn't love them the way I loved April. And I thought, okay, I guess I'm going to go back to loving characters the way I used to because there's no way I can love a character that I like April. And I love this book even more. Like this book was I wrote this book from a place of like just making sure I very much was doing what I needed to do, like telling the story I needed to tell. I gave myself permission to write it even though I was really scared to put it out into the world. Um, so I think that's what surprised me is that like now I feel like I'm never gonna love another set of characters the way I love these guys.
Well, I
Well,
thought
I'm
that about your
actually
last
thinking
book, and
that
that
as a
was not true
reader.
because I love this one too. So,
Thank you.
Yeah.
okay, next up is Shanna. Shanna Banana, where are you?
Hi, Allison. I
Hi.
I am so surprised how hard it was for you to get The People We Keep published. I was not expecting that at all because I love that book so much. I was wondering, was it easier on this one? Did you have an easier time working with editors and did they come into it understanding who you were as an author better?
Um, you know, that's I think what I've come down to as a writer, which makes me a very difficult writer, is that the feedback that I want the most comes from other writers.
Hmm.
Um, you know, I don't necessarily think someone who hasn't written a book can see all the layers of what's happening in a book the same way that other writers do. And so sometimes you get feedback on a book that's like, um, well, I don't know, do you really need a rat and a cat? Like could it just be one character? And it's like, well, but I need Lenny. Like Lenny's funeral was important. It was so important to the book. It was a pivotal moment, and I need the cat at the end so that that's the tell about Jam. And like, not only that, but none of the scenes about Lenny or Anus are about them. You know, it's about the relationship to them and everything. So I feel like those are the kind of the levels of things where like when you get feedback from people who don't write books, you get a lot of like, well, what if it was this instead of that? And when I would then take that feedback to my writer friends like Regina Marler or Renee Swindle, Regina and Renee would have these like emergency novel meetings with me. Like I'd be like, I got some feedback. Like when I got the feedback from the male writer and stuff like that, they'd be like, okay, emergency Zoom. And they actually read the book after like the male writer had read it because I was just kind of like, am I totally off base here? No one else has really read the book yet, you know, and they're like, okay, give us a week. And so, you know, you can say things to them like, well, I'm getting this feedback because, you know, you like, I have this thing of like, I want to be a good girl. I don't want to be like temperamental. I want to, but I also want to be an artist that's like, this is my time capsule of my brain in the world. Like, this is what I'm offering the world. It's, and so feedback from other people, say, this is what they're saying. Like Renee and Regina would be like, well, but you need Lenny and you need dates. And that's writer brain. Writer brain sees that immediately. You understand the way there's through, or you understand there's a slow build to this book very much on purpose because I am taking you through a lot of really hard things, and you have to love Freya to be there for it. And not everyone's going to love Freya, but I'm building that love very systematically. Like everything that stays in this, everything that stays in any of my books is very much on purpose. So something that might seem like a little backstory that doesn't matter, oh, you could just cut that, that doesn't get us anywhere. It's like, no, that's all. Like my best example was in The People We Keep. There's a scene where April is talking about this woman in her town who gambles all the time. And it was like, oh, well, that's just another character. Like, you don't need that. And it's like, no, that's the scene where we learn about the town she's growing up in, how women are seen in that town, what April's future was going to look like if she stayed there, how her father relates to women, how her father in the world. Like, there's so much information in that scene. And that's the same thing with, like, there's so much information in Freya's relationship with Lenny Juice. Like there's so much about Freya in there that has nothing to do with like it's not that we need a rat and a cat. It's that we need those moments, you know? And they're specific and they matter. And I also have started to realize that like there's things that my brain does that I'm not completely aware of that I have to kind of let it do. Like, there's a balance to this book that if I had taken too much outside advice that wasn't considering the balance, I wouldn't have had it there. Like, there's an example of a toxic immigrant family in Freya's Italian family, and then there's the Singhs who are lovely, supportive people. There's Charlie's addiction, and her mother's addiction, and then there's Jam's addiction, and so and Buck's addiction. So you have like the addict who is toxic, but that doesn't mean all addicts are toxic. They're, you know, after completely but then Han, this huge age gap in their relationship, and it's fine. There's this balance to things that I think you kind of have to give yourself permission and say, like, I'm gonna trust my brain on this because I think there's stuff at play that's to me yet, you know, which makes me difficult. I am difficult, apparently.
You're not difficult. You are a masterful storyteller.
Thank you.
All right, Janie, you are up.
Oh, Allie,
Oh, yes.
I've been reading your books since Stay.
So good
I
to
love
see
them.
you.
I know you too. And you're so close. You're only in San Francisco. Um, but there's been a progression. Something happened. There was Stay. My book club read it. We all loved it. And then we got to the swimming for sunlight. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah.
The mermaids. I love the mermaids so much. And then I remembered distinctly the moment when I looked on Instagram and I went, Allison? Wait, she's Allison Larkin. And I started reading The People We Keep, and it almost felt like, not totally, but it almost felt like you became a different writer. You know
Yeah.
what I'm saying? It's like you always had depth in there. There was like in the mermaid books, there's a lot of depth to those characters, and there's a whole underlying point that somebody could just read it and go, that was cute, and not get if they're not a careful reader. But what happened? How did you make this transition into who you are now? Because now it's just layers and layers and layers and layers.
Yeah.
And it's
I mean,
beautiful.
I was writing The People We Keep at the same time as I was writing Stay. Like I started writing The People We Keep in the middle of Stay. And so I kind of thought that was going to be my first book, and then my dog got sick and he ended up getting better, but like I thought like I wanted to preserve him, so I need to finish Stay. And it's really a matter of like when you're writing women's fiction that can kind of be called a romantic comedy, there's a box that you're going to be in. And I had a lot of fun playing with that box and seeing how much depth I could cram into it, and like how much, how realistic I could make a genre that has a certain amount of fancifulness to it. Like I love those books. Like it's just a different facet of me, it's like I love watching little indie movies where like, there's just a cello playing the whole time and nothing really happens. It's just a mood. And then I also have seen every single episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine times and I love it, and think that it's brilliant. And I don't think one is more brilliant than the other. I think it's just format, So I really love getting to play with format and expectations. And like when I wrote Stay, there's a moment where like John Cusack would have been there with the boombox, but instead it's my main character and she's there with a shirt and she's saying like, I bought you this and I'm worth it. And she's not being begging him to love her. She's saying like, here's a shirt, I'm worth it, you should see that, basically. And that was me because I wanted to play with the format of romantic comedy. So I've always been doing both, basically, but I had a really hard time with The People We Keep because I was pegged as a dog writer. Um, Nobody really got what I was doing with writing something at a different depth, and writing something with a different level of texture and different pacing. But it's not that, like they didn't get that because they already saw me a specific way. So like even just after I'd written Stay, I had a box I had to break out of to have anybody pay attention to me with The People We Keep. And the difference between that was that's why I changed my name, because like I don't think that my readers necessarily see it. Like you see that there's a difference, but I think you probably also see that like my heart's the same,
Right.
you know? And I don't think that the business of publishing knows how to handle that specifically. So just using my full name was the way to signal like those are the Allie Larkin books. These are the Allison Larkin books. I kind of refer to the Allie Larkin books as like my past tense books. Those are
Mm.
people who are telling you a story about what happened to them. And then these books are like what's happening to them with characters who don't have like a perspective beyond the immediate, you know?
That is so fascinating because we do, because of this book club, right? We talk to a lot of authors, and it is so interesting how publishing works from your perspective of getting your books into the hands of readers and how they can't quite comprehend that we are complex human beings that may have different, like different types of books from the same author. It seems like they want to stick you in this little box.
And I think a lot of it is just like marketing. It's like once you
Right.
get into a certain thing, like they know how to market that book. And like, I don't want to, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but like, because I'm not, like, it was a really frustrating situation because I had this book I loved and nobody knew what to do with it. Like, I think we're seeing a little bit more of young adult characters who aren't young adults than we were at the time that The People We Keep was published. I've seen people use my book as a comp title, and that makes me really happy. But
Oh,
like nobody knew, at one point they wanted me to make it new adult, like way back in the day. It was like young adult, then it was new adult, then it was, it's um like and when they wanted me to call my book that, it wasn't just a name. They wanted me to fit it into the convention of that book. And I was saying like, but why can't I write my version of Catcher in the Rye? Like men get to do that. Why can't I do that?
wow.
And so that's kind of the battle, and it's not any one person's fault
Mm.
because it's a business. They don't necessarily match books of an author through the process. Yeah.
Right.
And other authors have problems when they write something new. It's not, I'm not like the martyr in this situation. Like other authors definitely can have backlash when they try something new, when someone's very specifically trying to write, once picks up their book because they feel like they know what they're going to expect. Um, and so I think the name change was fair. It was weird for me to be called Allison all of a sudden because like
I'm Allie.
yeah, well, it's funny because like all my friends in college called me Al. Nobody called me Allie, and then
You're
I
like,
didn't like.
who?
Yeah, I didn't like being
Who are you
called
talking to?
Allison. So, and then when I went into like writing women's fiction, I was like, well, I can't be Al, so I guess I'll go back to Allie because I don't want to be Allison. And then now I'm back to being
No, you're
Allison.
Allison.
The trauma of my name is over. Like I'm fine with it now. So,
Multifaceted. I love
yeah.
it. Okay, who was next? Jackie, you're up.
Okay, so my question is about the title because all we really get circus wise is Bet. Like, I am curious as to where the title came from.
Well, so Somers, and it's funny because when I've talked to people from Somers, it's technically the cradle of the American Circus, but that's because another town got all up in arms about the fact that it was called the home of the American Circus because they're like, no, we're the home of the American Circus, you're not. And
Oh,
so
funny.
they technically adopted Cradle of the American Circus, but I grew up in the home of the American Circus. That's what it was called. And then I also think that the American Circus is the family structure that we have and the expectations that we have and the ways we decide who gets to tell stories and the chaos. There's like that like not my circus, not my monkeys kind of expression. Um, but you know, if the circus is chaos, I think that the ways that we've expected things from people have kind of gone beyond. There's like a lot of things that we do in our society because of tradition, even when the tradition doesn't necessarily serve the people anymore. And I think that that creates inner turmoil. And to me, that's like the inner circus. To me, a circus is not like I didn't like the circus as a kid. Like, um, to me,
I
it
was
was
like, I
like
just wanted to free all the animals, but that
yeah, exactly.
why
It
are
was
they all
loud and
tied up?
bright.
Those poor things. Why are they making that
Yeah.
lion jump through that fire?
Exactly. And so to me, like the circus is a certain amount of captivity, and this book is about like escaping captivity.
Yeah.
So, and the backdrop of Old Bet is, what happens when we don't escape captivity.
Mhm. Mhm.
I really loved that was something I think unexpected also about writing the book is that it did make me remember the things that I loved about Somers and like where I
Mm.
grew up and the things I was thankful for, which I had kind of let myself forget. You know,
Yeah.
you write off a place and then you don't
Yeah.
know the things that you love about it anymore.
Which goes back to, the relationships too, that tension of, you know, good and bad. Like it doesn't have to be any all of one thing. And same thing with places. They don't have to be all one thing.
Yeah, very much so.
So, Allie, because we love you, we all want to know what's next. Like,
Yeah,
I know that you just thought like we're done, but no, we are all chomping at the bit we know you're working on something else, right?
I am. Yeah, and I have been for a very long time. I actually had started it as like a television pilot and then realized that I wanted to write it as a book.
Oh,
So it for a while, and it is definitely like if there's been music and art in my other books, like this one's just like all in on that.
cool.
It takes place in the Bay Area, which is the first book I've written on the West Coast. So interesting. I'm excited about that. I think I've kind of like worked through my East Coast ideas for now. So, what like I don't know, 10 years, 11 years of living out here and just interesting. Um, but I'm excited about it. It's like a family saga of a very um, dysfunctional and unconventional family.
Hmm.
And I'm
And
very
like, where are you in this process? Is it like out for bid? Is it already like
no, it
guaranteed
is.
printing? Is it gonna come next year? Or is it still in your brain?
I have a storyline written out and have a lot of like the planning done, and now the characters are built, and but I don't want to sell it. I'm not under contract right now, and I don't
Okay.
want to sell it until it's completely and totally done because um, I just want it to be mine. Like I want to
Yeah,
feel like I want to feel like I'm writing completely for myself without a deadline right now for a little while.
I love that. Which brings me to, I did want to, before you leave, talk about your True Hearts Collective. Like, tell everyone about that
Yes.
because I think that's really cool and it seems like that's something that's really you're passionate about.
I love the True Hearts Collective so much. You're all welcome to join if you would like to. It's a Patreon group. And it's not that expensive. But we have office hour meetings twice a month. We also have a visiting artist and we have a film club. And it is basically born from the fact that, if I didn't have these emergency novel meeting friends, if I didn't have the people who carried me through with the people we keep and kept telling me like, no, keep working on this. You're not wrong. Like you just haven't found the right place for it yet. I don't know that I'd still be writing. Like I think that my friends got me through times when other people couldn't see what I was doing. And so I have realized so much how important having a creative community is, and that you can't really shape your work hoping someone's going to love it. Like you have to write the stories that you need to write the way that you need to write them and then find the people who understand that. You can't,
Yes.
you can play with a format, but you can't write to appease somebody, or you can't write to be like, please love me.
Mm.
You have to write in a world that you love and do the best that you possibly can for those characters. And the way to have the strength to do that is to have peers who understand what you're doing and who are cheering you on. And so I realized that I have that, and that's been such a huge part of my life. But I know that a lot of people starting out don't have that. I wanted to have a community where people could meet each other. Everybody's supportive.
Mm.
We talk about all sorts of things. We have one recorded meeting a month that's usually about a topic. Like we talked about doing research and all the weird places you go to research little details that you need for your book. But also we have an unrecorded meeting. So if you have a problem where you're like, I just got rejected by 27 people and I don't know how to deal with this, you don't have to feel like anyone's ever going to see that. But all the recordings are behind a paywall,
Mm.
and I don't really publicize it. Like everybody's welcome,
Yeah.
but I'm not like using clips from it to try to get more members. Like you have to really want to be in True Hearts Collective to be in True Hearts Collective.
But I just think it's beautiful because like I feel like it's so much your heart too, though, that you have had wonderful success and it is so in your nature that you are now sharing that success and sharing your knowledge and some of the, you know, tips and tricks that have worked for you or, you know, just encouraging others. I love that. I love that you're just lifting other people up through this.
Also seen so many writers who were so talented and had, an agent who didn't understand what they were doing, and that was the end of their career.
Right. They
Like
stop.
they stopped, or they, you know, just kept trying to make that agent happy, and like that could have been me if I hadn't had that support. So I I just like I feel like if you want to have good art and you want to have a good landscape of good art, you have to be part of supporting it
Mm.
because it's really hard to be a creative person in the world. There's a lot of emotional abuse that comes along, and
And it's
um,
lonely. You're working on
it's
on your
lonely.
own, whether you're an artist, a writer, a photographer, a sculptor, the nature of the beast is you're doing it by yourself.
Yeah, and a lot of times you're doing it by yourself, and the people around you don't understand what it's like to be like, oh no, I'm not going to go to that thing. I'm going to stay home by myself and be weird all weekend with my imaginary friends.
Me
So,
every day.
yeah, exactly. So it's like,
But I
just
want to go
have,
to that book event. I mean, I really like the book, but then I have to be around people.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely a bunch of introverts, and anybody is welcome to join us. We'd love to have you, and everybody's so kind. Like you call a group the True Hearts Collective, and the
Yeah.
right people show up, which
So
is
when did this start? Because I feel like it's pretty new.
we've been through a whole year now.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's awesome.
It started because there was just a whole bunch of horrible things going on in the world, and
Right.
I didn't know what to do about them. And I decided that I was going to raise money for World Central Kitchen.
Mm.
And so, and it was one of those moments where I didn't second guess myself. Like I had an idea and I put it on Instagram and said, uh, a coffee chat with me. And if you want to have a coffee chat with me, I'll donate $65 to World Central Kitchen. You donate that, and then we'll talk and we can talk about anything you want to talk about, and we'll just Zoom. And I thought maybe like 5 people would want to do it, but I forget how many it was. I mean, I had like a month and a half of like Zoom meetings with people where I was having these coffee chats. And most of what people were saying was like, how do you deal with this weird creative thing? Or do you
Right.
just they need to know each other.
Mm.
And so that's how it started was like I got where I am because of my friends, and I really realized there was a need for other people to have that community. So I felt like it was the obvious next step. Like it felt like my responsibility. Like I couldn't look away from that. And so
That's so
um,
cool. I mean, I think it's great because like my husband says all the time, like, you know so much stuff, but like you think it's normal that people know that, but not everybody knows what you know. And I think that's true in every capacity. Like you know what you know, and if you just keep it, no one else knows it. So,
yes, and there's so much like doubt about doing things in the world. So it's
yeah.
like just hearing that other people still have that doubt, that you're not alone in it. Because I think we think that if
Yeah.
we doubt ourselves, that that's telling us something.
Mm.
It's like I still doubt myself. I'm telling you about my next book, and I'm like, can I pull it off? I don't know if I can pull it off. Yeah,
Oh,
I can pull
you
it
got
off.
this.
I mean, I do, and I know that on some level, but also there's
But
always
it's
those,
so nice when you have a whole community behind you, telling you and
yeah,
supporting you
yeah.
and walking alongside you.
And
Yeah.
also just to know that like you're always going to fight. That's your eternal battle is believing in yourself. And it
Yeah.
doesn't matter where you get, that's still just part of the process is figuring out how to believe in yourself.
Yeah. Amen. All right, friends, everybody grab your book because I want to make sure we get a picture with Allie and her beautiful book.
I feel like I should have mine too, or maybe I shouldn't. I don't know.
Yes, no, we want you to have your book. That's awesome. And then let me change the view so we can see everybody and you can see all these fabulous people holding your book. Yay. Laura, do you have a book handy? I don't want to take the picture without Laura if she's got a book.
No, sorry, I did the
Oh, that's
audio.
okay. I didn't want to leave you hanging.
You.
All right, Missy, are you going to take a photo or do you need me
Yes,
to?
yes.
Okay, you ready? I heard it. You
I
do it with your phone or you do it with the.
just took a screenshot.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. All right, friends. The one thing we didn't talk about, Allie, which, I just feel like we need to talk about is the audiobook because it was
Oh my
spectacular.
gosh, yes.
Are you just
Julia,
like best friends with her now? Because is this your third book with her?
this is my fourth
Fourth
book
book
with
with
her. there was one Swimming for Sunlight, they didn't get her, and I was devastated. But Julia and I have been together since Stay, and that was like one of the first books she ever narrated when,
So
my first
cool.
book, and then she did Why Can't I Be You? And then The People We Keep, and then this one, so that's four. She is brilliant.
Yeah.
I think she's one of the most brilliant writers. I think she is the most well-read person any of us know,
Hmm.
um, and has like a sense of story and understanding that I don't think anybody else has because she's read so many books twice, three times, four times. Like she's lived inside all these different books with all these different voices and characters. And I just think she's so brilliant and empathetic and as much as I have always been blown away by the other books that she read, I am in complete awe of her reading of Home of the American Circus. Like,
I was gonna ask, like, did you get to listen? Do you listen to it yourself? Because some people are like, I can't hear it. It's my book. It's weird, but I'm like, it's so good.
to it, I felt like she understood things I didn't think anybody else would understand. Like there were layers of things that I just was, I mean, I write for myself primarily, and so like there were layers of things where I was like making a reference to tell by her inflection that she did. Like there's just things where she just delivered everything. I mean, different meaning in something, where she finds a deeper meaning in something that I just thought was a throwaway liner.
Hmm.
She got the second, third, fourth levels of this book and figured out a way to express them. And I think we're just looking at one of the most brilliant people in the world at like their top form in
Right.
time. Like
It's an art form. It is a craft, and she has a way of elevating a novel.
she does. And with this one, it's like, I mean, I wrote this book specifically with her voice in my head too.
Oh,
I was
I wonder because I'm like, you guys clearly have a connection. Like you share a
yes.
brain or something.
Yeah, and I specifically kind of wrote it thinking of her voice as Freya's voice as I was writing it. Like when I first heard her read from Stay,
Hmm.
I heard a sample and started crying because I was like, that's what Van sounds had.
Wow.
Um,
Hmm.
I don't know. Like this was as much as I feel like I work with my work but this is something so special that I
Hmm.
don't have the words for it. It's amazing. She's incredible. And then I also read the acknowledgments on the audiobook myself and had
Oh.
a sense of how immensely difficult her job is. Like, not that I thought that it wasn't work or that I know how hard she works. I know how brilliant she is, but oh boy,
You had to
like,
read them, and you're like, I am reading this part right now.
yes.
I feel like I
Or
don't want
like
to sound like that.
I recorded it in my closet because they offered to send me to a studio, and I was like, I'm just gonna cry the whole time. Like, I'm gonna cry
Aw.
like the first 17 takes of this and like chew up their studio time. So I recorded it in my closet with my
Oh,
podcasting mic because I was like,
I love that. Even that's so special. Hmm.
so
That's awesome.
yeah.
Okay, my friend. Missy, did you have anything else?
No, this was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you,
I
Allie, for your time.
It was so lovely to see all of you, like so many of you I know, like, and haven't seen you moving and talking, and
That's fun, right?
amazing. So fun. And Shannon, again, thank you for that amazing reel that you made of Somers.
That was
It's
cool.
incredible.
My pleasure.
Oh,
And I
so
did I did learn I was actually texting people at the beginning of this because I was like, I gotta get answers that the former Bet statue is in the museum in the Elephant Hotel. So a
Oh,
picture will happen.
okay. Oh, good. I mean, I
so
Yes.
think
Jam
if
didn't
we
move
were in
it.
a dump, yeah,
You know, but Bet was saved.
that's good.
That was
That's
safe.
At
good.
least that version of her.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, that was really fun. I appreciated you sharing that, Shannon. That was cool.
Oh, my pleasure. It was a fun little scavenger hunt, and my kids got a kick out of it. They're like,
Oh,
"You did that? That's so cool."
that's awesome. It was really great.
Yes.
It was fun to see everything, like my old neighborhood and everything. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have
Well,
plans
if
to
you,
go back now or like no?
no,
I'm
like
like, please.
my chronic health stuff makes it
Yeah.
dangerous for me to travel. So it's like I don't know. At one point I was like, I'm gonna buy a camper van, I'm gonna drive across the country, and then I was like, I'm really tired and I want to write another.
That all sounds
So
neat in theory. I could just picture
yeah.
like them reaching out to you and being like, "We want to do something with you."
I feel like the Somers Historical Society is probably not super happy with me. I don't know that for sure, but I just had this sense that like I kind of just called their history a lie. So I
I
feel like
think
you
you're
don't make
just
press about
helping
them.
to expand the history.
Yes, there's more to it. It's a more
And then
interesting
people will want to
story.
visit there now. So
Yes. I will say, like, you should go to Il Forno. Like, it was
there
a
you
great
go.
restaurant. Like, I've heard it's gotten better. So,
That's amazing.
yeah, it
All
was good.
right.
I heard it's great. So,
Thank you for your time. We just love and adore you. Your books are incredibly, beautifully well written and just moving. And I'm so thankful that you feel confident enough to just write what your heart is telling you to write. So keep it
well,
up.
I really appreciate it. I appreciate you so much. And it was so great to see all of you. And
We'll
yeah.
have you back. You let us know when you're ready.
All right, I will.
All
All right.
right. Thanks,
Take
friend.
care.
Thanks, everybody, for
Thank
joining us tonight.
you.